Arizona Cardinals, Dallas Cowboys, Monday Night Football, everything you need to know in 15 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these for every primetime game and every game on Sunday to give you a unique edge, looking at coverage data, run scheme metrics, and overall trends nobody talks about because it relates to the scheme behind the game instead of just the numbers you see on the screen. Without further ado, let's get into this breakdown. Transparently, this might be the most in-depth breakdown for a primetime game I've done all year. So if you are new, you enjoy this stuff, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Arizona, Dallas, Monday Night Football, the Cardinals defense, they are pretty good on the ground, but they provide a matchup for Dak to feature his best pass catchers, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, more often. In terms of the data outliers, again, they're only allowing 4.15 yards per carry, a little bit more than 100 yards per game. And on the bad side, they are allowing 243.6 pass yards per game and 6.7 receptions per game to the tight end position, also allowing 68.7 yards per game to that position, both bottom five in the NFL. In terms of coverage data and trends, they're running more zone comparatively than man to other teams in the league. The most important thing here, though, is their middle field open heavy. That's cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, but specifically cover 4. Extremely cover 4 heavy. It makes sense. You can keep the 2 high shell with putting your safeties a little closer to the box, helps in the run game a little bit. That's their bread and butter. That's primarily what they do on defense. I believe it's more than every 4 snaps they're playing cover 4. Now, in terms of what the Cowboys and Dak Prescott does against cover 4, the jury's kind of still out. They haven't played a top 10 in terms of usage cover 4 team. The only matchup, the cover 4 heavy matchup they've seen is Philly. Now, I look at a performance from CeeDee Lamb, 7 for 110, and thinking about leaving a lot on the table. And I'm like, this could be his game. But it's also important to note that Jake Ferguson still did have 5 catches in this game. I, again, think cover 4 less important than the whole middle field open thing here. And I think it's pretty clear to see Jake Ferguson as the guy in middle field open. In terms of his usage compared to the other wide receivers on the Dallas Cowboys, it's much heavier for Ferguson against middle field open coverages. Middle field closed, outside, cover 1, cover 3. Pickens, even CeeDee Lamb getting targeted more often. Middle field open. Ferguson takes a big step up. Those guys take a big step down, especially George Pickens. Much less George Pickens usage in middle field open coverages. In terms of Dak, where he likes to throw the ball, I decided to divide it up into without CD and with CeeDee Lamb. Without CeeDee Lamb, he's throwing to the slot way less, which makes a lot of sense. CD is running the majority of their slot routes, and he's throwing to the outside a little bit higher, right? There's a noticeable increase in terms of tight end targets or inline tight end targets and running back target rate without CeeDee Lamb. It makes sense, right? You have to throw to the running back position or the tight ends if you don't have your number 1 receiver. With CeeDee Lamb, it is a heavy slot target rate, and a pretty good outside target rate as well. Now, it's important to note this slot target rate. I just mentioned CeeDee Lamb being the main slot guy. He is. But Jake Ferguson is running a good amount of his routes from the slot as well. And when you look at Arizona, the defensive target rates, they're also surrendering a very high slot target rate. Like I wrote down here, CeeDee Lamb number 1, Jake Ferguson number 2. When you go look at some of the game logs against the Arizona Cardinals, you can see some of those inside guys having better performances than, the main out wide guys. I go back to Ricky Persall's performance in week 3, who again was the main slot guy there. 11 targets, 117 yards. JSN out wide. It was a tough game against Arizona for him, but then you scroll down even a little bit more. Josh Downs, 7 targets, by far the most targeted Indianapolis Colt against this Arizona Cardinals team. 42 yards and a touchdown. You go back to Tyler Warren, who runs a good amount of his routes from the slot. 9 targets, 6 receptions, and a touchdown. Tucker Kraft, just a couple weeks ago, 10 targets, 5 catches, and a touchdown. Now, those more dynamic slot tight ends will get some usage, but the receiver position, again, with CeeDee Lamb is pretty important. Comparatively, they're not allowing Arizona Cardinals a ton of targets anywhere else. It makes sense. They want to keep everything between the hashes. It's their middle field open mantra, I guess. It makes sense. In terms of the run game, though, like I mentioned up top, Arizona's solid against the run. The way they match up against Dallas is very interesting, though. Dallas is good on the ground in terms of overall yards per carry, overall yards per game. Javonte Williams has been pretty good. But I think Arizona has them outmatched. I think they do. In terms of what Dallas does, they're pretty frequent in terms of their man gap scheme runs compared to the zone runs, and they're actually pretty good with it. It doesn't matter for Arizona, though. Like, they're not worse, significantly worse against a certain scheme. They've seen a little less man gap, but it's not super noticeable. Arizona's run defense has been pretty stout. And I think Dallas very clearly has an edge through the air here. I think it's going to be magnified because Arizona likes to stop, or they're good at stopping the run. The only thing that pushes me away from that is the fact that they are a middle field open heavy team. If they're going to keep the too high shell, Dallas is going to want to run the ball a little bit more. But when they do throw the ball, we talked about it, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson. And honestly, I am just looking at Dak because of that run scheme data. Like, he will throw the ball a good amount. I think this is going to be a moderately close game. I'll tell you who I think is going to win at the end. But I'm looking at Dak to take advantage of a good matchup where he can keep things between the hashes, which he loves to do. Obviously, if he gets his one-on-ones on the outside with George Pickens, he's taking his chances. But Dak loves to keep it between the hashes. He absolutely loves to utilize his best pass catcher and CeeDee Lamb, and the majority of that stuff is going to happen between the numbers, between the hashes. Let's talk Cowboys defense. As always, guys, I have more individual player breakdowns on my socials, all linked in the description. Make sure you're following on their Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok if you're not already. You can pause the video, follow, come back. Let's talk Cowboys defense, though. They are brutal through the air, but can it be mitigated by a backup quarterback? Yes, Jacoby Brissett is starting. Kyler Murray might have a role. We'll talk about that here in a second. I don't know what's going on with Kyler Murray, but in terms of the data outliers, they don't have any good ones. This is not a good defense. They're allowing 273.1 pass yards per game, 20 passing touchdowns given up, and the second highest passer rating allowed in the NFL. In terms of how that's distributed across pass catchers, it's primarily receivers. They're bottom 3 in wide receiver yards allowed, only bottom 10. I say only bottom 10 in wide receiver receptions allowed, meaning big plays over the top, right? But 5.75 tight end receptions per game is interesting to know. And also 5.13 running back receptions per game is a pretty solid thing too. They're allowing almost 5 yards per carry and 146 rush yards per game. Now, do you trust Bam Knight? I don't, but he's definitely somebody to watch because of these numbers here. They have not been good defensively really all year long, and I don't expect it to change dramatically this week. In terms of the coverage data and trends, they're extremely zone heavy. They're balanced in terms of middle field open, middle field closed, but when they run their middle field open, it's their most frequent coverage. It's cover 2. It's the Eberflus special. He loves playing cover 2. We got to talk about what that means for Cardinals pass catchers as well as quarterbacks, because I broke it down, Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett. In terms of cover 2, it's Trey McBride. You look at some of the other heavier cover 2 teams they've played. I go back to the Packers game, and it's good because they played the Packers with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. That's really the only moderately heavy cover 2 team they've played. But you go look, Trey McBride, best game of the season, 10 catches, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers. It's also interesting to note Bam Knight, right? 3 catches in this game. Even Michael Carter had 2 catches in this game. The running back position used a little bit more. But then you go look at these receivers, guys. This is the big thing here. No big performances from these receivers. Cover 2 makes sense. You cloud the outside guys. I am not expecting a crazy game. It's important to note that they were down. It was a down day for receivers. In terms of middle field open coverages, so that includes cover 2, but cover 4, cover 6, it's still Trey McBride. He's heavily targeted. The efficiency numbers support it more than anything else, like targets per route run, how often he's being targeted. It's not as explosive. Like, the big plays aren't necessarily there, but the usage is. I think the targets will be, especially compared to those coverages versus man-to-man middle field close. And this Dallas secondary is beat up, so I don't foresee them playing a ton of man unless they really feel like they have an advantage, which I don't think they do. And to be honest with you, I don't think they do. In terms of target rates, again, Jacoby Brissett is starting. Kyler has a potential role. No idea what that means. No idea what it's going to mean. But in terms of Kyler versus Brissett, the bottom line is Jacoby Brissett uses tight ends a little bit more. Kyler is pretty high in terms of how often he targets the slot. It's Trey McBride, but it's also, guys, sorry, I keep getting this fuzz in my nose. It keeps Kyler is high in the slot target because of Trey McBride, but when it comes to those inline routes, he tends to look them off. Pretty high slot and running back target rate as well, lower out wide in terms of Jacoby Brissett. He is giving up more, throwing more out wide targets, but there's an enormous increase in inline tight end target rate. You hear me? Enormous increase in inline tight end target rate. You take it with a grain of salt because the 2 games they played were against teams that were really susceptible to the tight end position. The Indianapolis Colts, who were not great, and then Green Bay, who's really not great against opposing tight ends. But It is important to note that. In terms of defensive target rates, where the Dallas Cowboys allow a lot of their targets, it's extremely heavy in terms of inline tight ends and running backs. We talked about Bam Knight's performance against Green Bay. We talked about Trey McBride's performance against Green Bay. I am watching that very, very closely. In terms of the run scheme metrics, this is also really interesting, guys. Dallas is actually solid on the ground, but I think Arizona has them outmatched again. Arizona is a heavy man gap run team, right? They're middle of the pack in efficiency, but they're bad in zone. They don't do zone much. They're bad in it. Dallas is bad against man gap. You go look at some of these game logs. So they played 3 other heavy man gap teams: the Giants, the Packers, and the Denver Broncos. You go look at some of these games against the Dallas Cowboys, the production on the ground for them. Man, J.K. Dobbins, 15 for 111. R.J. Harvey, 2 explosive plays and 2 touchdowns. You go back even more to, I'm looking at the right things. Josh Jacobs, 22 carries for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. You go back, Cam Scatterbu, Tyrone Tracy, weird game. The Giants took the top off, but even Scatterbu was able to get in the end zone. I think there's going to be some success on the ground here for Arizona. As weird as it sounds, the players to watch: Trey McBride, Bam Knight. The receiving production for McBride, especially receiving production for Bam Knight. But to me, there's run scheme metrics that support Arizona having an edge on the ground. I think their defense is underrated in terms of the red zone edge. It's slightly Dallas. You go look at some of these numbers in terms of how often they're scoring. Like, it's nothing crazy. Dallas is almost in the top 10. Arizona's just below average. You go look at the defensive numbers for the red zone stuff. Dallas is bad. Dallas is really bad. Arizona is, they're okay, but Dallas is really, really, really bad. I still think Dallas gets the edge in the red zone in terms of the sacks allowed. Like, neither team, is really getting after the quarterback. Like, you can see it here. The 2 of the fewest sacks per game in terms of defensive sacks per game. Look, it's rough for the Arizona Cardinals in the pocket right now, giving up 3.4 sacks per game currently. I still think Dallas has the edge on the line of scrimmage. It's very close, but the bottom line here is, through the air, I think Arizona has enough, and I think they can win this game. I think they keep it close. I actually think they pull it off. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We'll see you next week for the Thursday Night Football breakdown. God bless.